Hi, Mr. McNamee. I'm so glad you had the time to join me today. What is your preferred name and what grade do you teach?
It's great to get a chance to speak with you about this today. Thanks for having me. Mr. McNamee, I teach 10th grade government class, my 24th year teaching that at Central Dauphin High School. Went to Bloomsburg University where I was a secondary education social studies major.
Well, that's great. What is your background and experience working with ELL students?
Pretty much each year, and especially in recent years, and pretty much in each class, I have had EL students to work with.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Can you describe the languages and cultural backgrounds of the ELL students that you work with?
I've worked with a wide variety at Central Dauphin, different backgrounds and languages. I've had students from Egypt. I've had students from Nepal. I've had students from different countries in Central and South America. And like I said, a wide variety of languages as well.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of diversity in your classroom with ELL
Certainly.
students. Um, how do you help your ELL students develop various language skills like listening, speaking, reading, and writing?
Yeah, this is very important. Thanks for the question. Because one of the most important things we want to improve upon are language skills. The content's very important. I'm biased like many teachers. I think my subject matters a lot. So we certainly want them to learn the content of government class. But language acquisition is paramount. The reading, writing, being able to listen, speak, just showing improvement in that throughout the year. So one of the things I like to do is be very repetitive. I think repetition helps. Of course, I also coach football, and I believe in repetition on the field. I see the power in it, and certainly in the classroom. And I know that's helped my ELL students since I've been doing this for years, and have had many ELL students in my classes. I've been able to get feedback from both them and aides in the classroom who have helped. And that repetition seems universally effective, but there's other strategies too that I'm sure we're going to get to talk about as this interview goes on.
Mm. Wow, that's great. That's great to hear. Can you tell me a little bit about the strategies you use to support the students' development of language? I know you talked about repetition, but are there any others that you use?
Yes. So when it comes, let me speak to repetition a little bit more. Uh, Something that I think is important is just clarity. And what's great about that is it's not just helping the ELL
Yeah.
students. I think it helps every student in the classroom. When the teacher is very clear and then is repeating
Mm.
those very clear concepts, words, and that way it's not just something targeted or geared towards ELL students only. So clarity is very important. Also, for the ELL students, uh, pictures, being able to associate what you're talking about with pictures.
Mhm.
That's something that I've often liked to use, and that also seems to be very effective.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things that have been helpful in my time at Central Dauphin.
Yeah, wow, that's great. I really like to hear that in my class that we're actually doing this interview for. We create picture dictionaries to practice help our ELL students understand the content. So that's great to hear that. Do you use any, this kind of goes along with that. Do you use any technology or visual supports? I know you said pictures as visual supports, but do you use technology to aid in that?
Yes, my students, depending on what level they are at, because some of the students I have, they're much better with language than some of the others, even in the same classroom. But depending on what level they're at, they certainly can use Google Translate. I use Google Translate for them, but they can certainly use it on their own. That's been extremely helpful. Our learning model that we use is Canvas, and Canvas has been a great tool to be able to post things, for them to be able to reference at any time they want that can be helpful to them. So technology, and these are things that didn't always exist because I've been there 24 years, and these technological advancements certainly have helped with the ELLs.
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine how much technology has been supportive because without those things, it probably was very challenging to help your students.
Indeed.
Um, so I'm going to be an elementary teacher, as you know. So this question was a little bit more geared towards elementary education and how general education, but it talks about your classroom library. I know that you might not have books in your classroom, but can ELL students get support from the library or find books, do you know, in the school that you teach at?
Well, first off, that's great to you're getting into elementary education. We certainly need a lot of good teachers at all levels, and having those books in the classroom at the elementary level can be a great resource. And I'm glad to hear that you're thinking along those lines. In my room, I don't necessarily have that collection of books that you would often find in an elementary room, but what I've been fortunate to have in a lot of my classrooms are a teacher's aide, a paraprofessional, and they also have been very, very helpful in finding resources to help the students in my classroom because they're in the room along with me and the students. They know exactly what the expectations are, the content that we're covering. So they're often wonderful at finding resources to help in whatever that we're learning in class.
That's great. Yeah, books. We learned that books are super important, so I'm glad that there's people that can help your students find them. I wanted to talk a little bit. I had a couple questions on advocacy because that's important for our ELL students. So my first question was, how do you advocate for your ELL students to ensure that they get the supports they need in place?
Another outstanding question. Uh, one of the most important things I think in the discussion about ELLs, I probably should have started with this, is mindset and perspective for the teacher. One of the things I think is very important in education, really in life, is trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I always try to imagine being in a classroom at any age, let alone as a teenager or in some cases elementary, without having a great understanding of the language that you're surrounded by, whether it's being spoken or written, or you're being asked to speak it or write it. That has to be a very, very challenging situation, one that I've never been a part of. And I think as a teacher, once you adopt that perspective and try to put yourself in their shoes, that's a game changer. And for me, what I've seen my ELL students do over the years from that perspective is nothing short of amazing. For them to be able to achieve in the manner in which so many of them have achieved for me in government class, despite that obstacle, not only is it amazing, but a lot of times it's inspiring.
Mhm.
So I think that's a very important perspective to begin with as you embark on the journey of any school year where you have ELLs in the classroom. Uh, I was so intent on getting that point across. Can you remind me what the question was that I was
Um,
speaking to?
I'm actually glad you brought that up because in our classes, we've been talking about the asset versus deficit mindset. So you bringing up mindset was really important, and I'm glad to hear that other teachers actually in the workforce do that because we have talked about how an asset-based mindset helps your ELL so much more than seeing their home language as a deficit. And when you see that as an asset and a help to your classroom and a benefit to them, then they can, like you said, grow so much in the classroom. So that was a great point you brought
It,
up.
it really is. And, for them,
Mm,
obviously, we see education as a launching pad. It's something that propel them into whatever the next chapters of life are. For them to have that experience of being able to overcome that and still be able to achieve and learn despite the language obstacles at the beginning, that's something that's going to help them in every aspect of their life, whatever the endeavor might be. Plus, for the kids that are in the room, the ones, the other students that aren't ELLs, there's a lot for them to learn. And I said about being inspired, I think there's many kids who have that same perspective where they put themselves in those shoes and they themselves can be not only impressed but also inspired
mhm.
by the work done by their fellow ELL students. So there's a lot of gains there for everybody in that classroom if you have the right perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Um, the question was, how do you advocate for your ELL students to ensure they get the supports they need in place?
Yeah, well, once you have that mindset as a teacher, I think it inevitably leads to wanting to advocate for them. And that is important because, the resources that exist, they don't always find their way to the kids themselves. And
Mhm.
that's where the teacher comes in. At Central Dahlvin High School, we now have two ELL teachers. We also have an ELL paraprofessional, but we have about 2,000 students at our school, and our ELL population has grown. So those two teachers and that one paraprofessional, they obviously can't be helping every ELL student at all times in every school day. So for me, I've really tried to make a connection with the ELL teachers, establish a good relationship and rapport with them, and the ELL para. One of the things I do at the very beginning of each school year is once I see the ELL students on my rosters, my class rosters, I immediately go to the ELL teachers, try to get a background, a scouting report, so to speak. There's the coach coming out in me, to see where each one is in their development and specific needs. That helps me a lot to know that going in. But by doing that, I think it also demonstrates, that I care, that I really want to establish a classroom where they can have the best year possible. And from that, I also do my best to get the paraprofessional in my room as much as possible, especially the rooms where I have the biggest needs. And over the past several years, I've been fortunate to have that kind of help from the ELL paraprofessional. Sometimes I also have paraprofessional for my learning support kids, and sometimes I encourage them to help too, even with the ELL kids if possible. And I've had that, and fortunately, I've had some really good learning support paras jump in to help in various ways,
Mhm.
and that to me has gone a long way in providing resources, necessary resources for my ELL students.
That's really great to hear. Like I said, as someone who's learning about all of this now and the importance of it in class and reading the textbooks, that's really great to hear that you do that in practice. Um, do you, I know that again, it's high school. This was more supposed to be geared towards elementary, but like you said, there's a lot, it's hard to find a lot of ELL teachers to have the time to interview. Like you said, they're very busy. So thank you for making time. But um,
Absolutely.
I know that I don't know this could relate to, like you said, you're a football coach, but do you find it beneficial to build relationships and make connections with the families? Maybe not your students in class, maybe you only see them like at back to school night or if they sign up for conferences, but I know you see your football parents a lot.
Relationship building is extremely important in all facets of education, certainly as it relates to ELL students and families. First, with the students themselves, that's something that has been important to me as a teacher. Not just important, but that's really where I derive a lot of my enjoyment in teaching is relationship building, getting to know the kids, the specifics, specific interests about kids, that you can talk to them about. And certainly with the ELLs, throughout their educational journey and experience, I'm sure they encounter a lot of different types of teachers. And again, being surrounded every day by language that you may or may not fully understand, I think it would go a long way. I know if I was in those shoes, it would go a long way. If a teacher established or attempted to establish a kind of relationship, try to get to know me as a student, maybe interests that I have, curious about my experience in the educational process. So that's again just trying to come at it from that angle. With families, I've had some meetings with ELL parents, and that has been very informative. And again, when they have that opportunity to sit down with a teacher, it really shows that you care about them more than just about their grade, and how they did on that last test or assignment or whatever it might be, and trying to go beyond that to get to know them and their families. And that might, propel them to maybe make greater attempts or certainly feel more comfortable communicating with me. Whatever questions they might have or concerns, the student or the parents might feel more comfortable then. And once you have that open line of communication, that goes a long way in teaching and education in general.
Yeah, that's great. Making connections is really important. Do you have any specific examples of connections you made with any ELL families or none that come to the top of your head?
Yeah, I remember having a meeting with one of my student athletes, his mother, and there was an interpreter in the room.
Wow.
And that was very helpful. We had guidance counselor, principal. It was a very good, very productive meeting. It was a student that was struggling in school. He wasn't doing that well academically. And from that meeting, there was definite improvement. And from that meeting, there were additional communications then with mom. And I think that helped him to get on a different path. And now he's somebody that gets in touch with me and the principal and the guidance counselor, let us know how well he's doing. He's doing tremendously well. Very, very successful student right now in college with very clear plans for his future. So it's great when you're able to be at a high school for this many years to kind of have that long horizon and see how things end up. And in this case, it's turning out really well.
Wow, that's great. I imagine if you didn't have that meeting, then you don't know where he would be. But because of those relationships, it really helps. And I could see how that's so beneficial.
Yep, you never know.
You never know. The next question is, what kinds of professional development did you undertake to support the needs of your ELL students?
Fortunately, at Central Dauphin, we've had some great professional development opportunities. Just this past summer, one in service that was offered, and I took full advantage of it. It was a full day in service specific for social studies ELLs. So I was able to spend the whole day with social studies teachers from our school district. We had two high schools, and we were able to talk about the specific needs and challenges related to ELLs and social studies, even government class in particular. You know, a lot of times in services, it's more broad in general related to the school environment overall. But man, to have a day where it was dedicated just to social studies department and our in our school district, and even government class in particular, that was great. I was able to accomplish a lot that day. I learned a lot. I was able to bounce a lot of things off of other teachers. Was able to work on modifying tests and quizzes for a variety of different chapters and units. And that was just one example. We've had other faculty meetings with our entire faculty at Central Dauphin High School, where the ELL teachers have addressed us, talked to us about some do's and don'ts, helpful tips, things to keep in mind, obligations that we have. That was something that was very informative as well. And overall, our district and our school building for sure has a commitment where they want to make sure ELLs have what they need to be successful.
Wow, that's really great to hear. That is. Um, yeah, wow. You're lucky to be in a school district that has that much support and you guys have all those trainings because it's really important because as someone, since you only speak one language, it's good to hear what it's like for other people.
I hope you'll be so lucky in whatever school you end up in, because it does help. It does
Me
help.
too, me too. Um, how do you help your ELL students feel seen and heard in your classroom?
Yeah, this is also very important. And you know, I know I've referenced this already a couple of times, but I want to reference it again. When you have that perspective of trying to put yourself in the student's shoes, like I said before, that's a game changer. And you know, I know I would want to feel heard. I wouldn't want to feel like I was invisible, so to speak,
Mhm,
or just another student in the chair.
mhm,
So I definitely, and that goes back to the relationship building piece I talked about earlier. You know, when somebody's speaking to you directly in a manner where you can tell they're trying to get to know you, that goes a long way in just that concept of being seen and heard.
mhm,
But certainly, any of the modifications made or any of the resources you try to get for them, that's another way that shows them that you care and that they're definitely seen and that they're not just falling by the wayside, or even worse, or they feel like they are a trouble, a bother.
mhm,
You know, certainly there's a lot of frustrations in teaching in general, and you can certainly have bad days. But if you have that perspective where you see the ELL student as just yet another thing you got to do, more modifications you got to make for yet more students, they could certainly feel that and receive that message of, wow, the teacher would rather me not even be here. You
mhm.
know, I'm just another bother, another layer of things that they got to worry about in their already busy day. So all of those other things I mentioned that just flow from that perspective, of seeing those students
Mm.
as a lot more of a blessing than a burden. That really, those things take care of themselves then.
Definitely. That's really great to hear. It's so important that they feel seen and heard because they belong just as much as everybody else, and they're trying. Not only are they learning the content, but in high school, learning a language is a lot more challenging than learning it in elementary school. So they're going through a lot and trying to learn so much content, and by feeling seen and having those modifications, they can tell that
Yeah,
they belong.
yeah, and at the high school level, it is so much content driven.
Mhm.
So, and the other thing that I've learned is language acquisition is always easier the younger a person is. So in high school, if they are just at the beginning stages of learning English and at a level that's so focused on content, that's very difficult
Yeah.
because you're at the same time you're trying to learn language and you're at an age where it's a little bit harder than when you're in elementary school and you have a teacher that's hyper focused on content.
Mhm.
I can only imagine what that must be like. It's got to be a lot coming at you and a lot to process. So
Yeah.
just again, having the right perspective and taking that into account goes a long way.
Yeah, and really putting yourself in their shoes. I mean, I know in my class we will practice greetings just by saying hello or good afternoon in other languages at the beginning of class, and it's hard to just learn those few words, and I can't imagine what they're dealing
Yeah,
with along, like you said, with all
yeah,
the content heavy things. So the modification and making them feel seen and like they belong is so important.
yep, no
Um,
doubt.
My last question on advocacy. Now, you mentioned you have a lot, not a lot, but get a lot of support from the paraprofessionals for your students. And so I was wondering, in what ways do you utilize the support from either administration, ELL teachers, and the aides for your students?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about the ELL teachers because a lot of times they know these students very well. At our high school, we're fortunate to have teachers that really they don't just help the ELLs; they really get to know them. So at the beginning of the year and even throughout the year, when I speak to them and ask them questions about the students, that's great insight. And with that insight, it can help you a lot on a daily basis in the classroom. The paraprofessional that's actually in the room, uh, wow, that is a really good resource. And many times I let them know, beginning or end of class, man, I don't know what I would have done without your help.
Mhm.
So one of the things I like to do is try to make them feel a part of class, make them feel welcome, make sure they know if they have any questions, they need any help, don't even hesitate ever to talk to me about it. But I often position them near the students, the ones that need the most help, and that enables them during the class, on the spot, in the moment, to provide help that may be needed in that moment. So that's the proximity aspect is certainly helpful.
Mhm.
But yeah, just making them part of class, making sure that they feel comfortable, uh, that they can ask me questions at any time. And what I also like to do is just speak to them regularly, just me and the para, kind of compare notes, see how things are going, progress checks. Hey, what are you hearing from them? Is there something particular I need to do differently? Is there something in particular that works really well? This is also where I'm able to get that feedback. I talked earlier about repetition.
Mhm.
The parents being in the room, they know what's helpful to their students, and I've heard them say many times it's great how you're really clear and how you repeat certain things, how you break things down into smaller parts. The modifications with the pictures, the use of Canvas. These are all things that many times, in many ways, came about from those conversations with the para that's in the room, on the ground every day, working hands on with the ELL students.
That's really helpful. Another question that I was wondering, do they ever help you or do you go to them for help with your modifications or any, like I said, that we use like picture dictionaries or even just modifying, I don't, if you have like written assignments or tests and quizzes that you hand out, do they ever help you modify those or is that on?
Yes, absolutely. And uh, the modifications that I use, and they kind of evolved each year through these conversations with paraprofessionals that are in the room. So I'm the one that creates them, but it's certainly their input has certainly been part of the creation of these modified tests.
Yeah, they're a good resource, especially since that they specialize in that. Then
Yes.
they are able to help with the general education teachers. It's super supportive. So like I said, I'm going to be an elementary school teacher. So it's a lot, and we're learning a lot, and I'm definitely going to work with ELL students. So I have a few questions on to end our interview, just on some advice. So, what do you find the most beneficial approaches to working with ELL students?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned them all so far. I think they're all important.
Mhm,
All that I mentioned. The utilization of resource in the building, ELL teachers, paraprofessional, really bringing them in and getting their help as much as you can get their help.
mhm,
The repetition, the clarity, that constant feedback loop from the kids and the paraprofessional in the room. But that comes from establishing relationships with both them and the students, and in some cases, families. The modifications, again, that come from that feedback. Every student is different in general. Certainly with ELL students, they're all different. That's another thing to keep in mind. They may all carry that label, but they're all their own individual students with their own individual needs, and
mhm,
they're all at their own place in their development in terms of language.
mhm,
So just always getting that feedback, I think, is extremely important. That can help guide and dictate what's needed this coming day or this coming week. So yeah, I think all the things we've talked about today, it'd be hard to say one thing more important than the other than, like I said earlier, just beginning the whole process with that proper perspective.
mhm, definitely. What are common mistakes that you might see new teachers make when working with ELL students?
Yeah, that's a really good question because uh, it's something that it does require uh, it does require commitment. I
Mhm,
mean, every aspect of education requires commitment
mhm,
because there's a variety of different challenges in general when it comes to learning and teaching. So I think one of the, I hate to say it yet again for this fear of being repetitive, but that mindset perspective, I think, is something that newer teachers might miss out on. Especially when you're a newer teacher, it can be overwhelming as is. And then you might look at the ELL students, yet another thing you have to quote worry about, or another thing that you have to do. And then from that will flow, I think, a lot of bad approaches towards that. So I think the biggest mistake for a young teacher is just not having the correct perspective. The other is maybe not having the confidence
mhm,
of bringing in those resources of people in the building, or maybe even having the confidence or understanding of how to use the technology.
mhm,
So I think with newer teachers, that combination of feeling overwhelmed, already feeling like you have a lot on your plate, plus not having the experience and the confidence that comes from that might help you draw in those resources that you need. But I would encourage any new teacher to try to overcome those things. You certainly can. And
mhm,
I think every building has people that can be helpful. Just asking,
mhm.
doing your very best to
Mhm.
draw in those people and draw in those resources to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I feel like that might have been similar to your answer for the next question. I wanted to just conclude our interview with if you could give one piece of advice to future teachers who work with ELLs, what would it be? And I assume it's probably similar
Yeah,
to what you said.
yeah, yeah. I would say very clearly, and I feel strongly about this through my own personal experience, is see the ELL students as individual students, uh, and see it as a great opportunity. Uh, one of the things that I think many teachers complain about or lament about in education today is apathy, or students not trying to and reaching their potential, or giving an effort that they're capable of. And so many times I've had ELL students who they give tremendous effort, and they have great commitment to their own education, and they really want to learn, and they really want to achieve, and they really want to get good grades. So in a world where unfortunately we do encounter students, especially at the high school level, where that may kind of drain you, take energy away from you because it gets frustrating that you're trying so hard and you feel like they're not.
Mhm.
These ELL students, and again, they're all their own individual student. Certainly, you can encounter ELL students just like any other student that may not try as hard as they can. But my experience, uh, you know, just overcoming the language barrier, that alone, but it's been amazing to see how many of them have worked really, really hard, and you can tell they have a desire to do well, to get good grades, and to learn. And if you're a teacher, a new teacher, just see that opportunity because as an educator, I think the thing that energizes us the most is when you have students that want to try, right, and they want to do well, and they want to achieve, and they want to get good grades. They have goals, and they're really trying to attain them. I think that's what really gives us our energy. It makes us want to come back the next day, makes us want to be the best version of ourselves. And honestly, the ELL students have been a great source of that for me, and I think other teachers as well. So having an open mind to that possibility, I think really does change things. And that would be my biggest piece of advice is to go in with that mindset.
Wow, that's really great, and I'll definitely remember that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this interview with me. I learned so much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you the very best in your future. I love the fact you're going to be an elementary school teacher, and I could tell from this interview you do a great job.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.